Greetings and welcome back to yet another episode of the Daily Round, and today we're playing as Samson. For me, Samson is one of those characters that just isn't super fun to play as, and that's mostly because of his stat distribution. The fact that he has a very high shot speed makes it quite hard to aim, but more importantly, I think he's a very deceptive character. And when I say deceptive, basically what I mean is that the less HP or the weaker your run is, the more likely it is that you're gonna get hit, which means that you're gonna get a larger damage bonus, and when you enter the next floor and lose all of that, you're gonna realize that your run is much weaker than it actually is, and that can lead to some very tricky situations and maybe you over assessing how strong your run is. And I always feel weak as Samson just because of that as soon as I enter the next floor until I actually get a damage up. So for that reason I really enjoy Samson whenever I have a way to actually deal damage to myself via something like IV bag or maybe a razor or something like that. And I really don't enjoy him when I can't afford to do that. So for that reason, because I do want that higher damage, I decide to enter the curse room, even though I only have 2 spirit hearts. I decide to sacrifice one of them to obviously get a chance of getting some spirit hearts, consumables, but thankfully this time we got the devil deal. And also the fact that we went to the curse room and we took damage obviously increased our passive damage as well, which was the main reason why I even decided to go in there. But basically what happens whenever you enter a red chest and it teleports you to the devil deal, you're gonna get a different pool of items than you would have gotten if you actually just caught the devil deal out of the boss. So what I'm trying to say is, if you beat the boss and get a devil deal, you're gonna have certain items in there. But if you enter on the same floor before you actually beat the boss, the devil deal via the red chest, you're gonna get a different pool of items, so the devil deal is gonna be different. So what happened in today's daily, if you enter the devil deal through the red chest like I did, you would have gotten Guppy's head and the goat head, and if you would have entered the devil deal through beating the boss, so when it opened after you killed the boss, I think one of the items was brimstone, which obviously leads to a lot of different runs, and it's probably one of the main reasons for variance that I think really shouldn't exist in these dailies. But due to how the game is coded, I think probably that's the only way they could have done it, and they decided to do it. And at the same time, it's a bummer when that happens, just because it's really up to luck, so if I decided to go to the curse room, maybe I'm a more experienced player in that sense, that I decided maybe having 4 health is enough, so I can decide to visit the curse room to kind of wager my health in for a chance to get some consumables or maybe get a good item out of it. And some people who maybe just weren't that comfortable with it decided, I'm gonna go to the devil deal and maybe then I will go to the curse room when I know I'm safe. And just basically by deciding that, or maybe just by sheer luck, depending on which room you stumbled upon, you're gonna have a vastly different run just based on that. And I think that's the biggest problem of dailies if you're gonna compare the variance. A lot of people complain about variance, but I think a lot of variance is inherent in Isaac, and you really can't control it in the sense that everything should just be the same for every single person. But I think those things could be amended in some way, at least that you would get the same devil deal regardless of where you enter it from. But yeah, with that said, still it was quite a good devil deal. We got one of the Guppy items, we got Goat Head, and obviously Goat Head does allow us to get a bunch of other devil deal items later on. And of course, again, people who didn't find the Goat Head had less devil deals, and also had different devil deals later on. Like I said, just that one decision that you can't really control can change the outcome quite severely. But the walnut item, so I had the walnut trinket, I didn't talk about it because I was talking about the devil deals, and what it said was that it's hard to crack or something like that. And at first I thought maybe that I need to drop the trinket and then use a bomb on it, but apparently what it does, basically whenever you take damage, there's probably a % chance that it breaks, so to say, and then you get certain consumables out of it. And I managed to get another trinket out of it, and I got Curved Horn, which is obviously great. Curved Horn increases your damage passively as long as you're holding it. But later on I got Guppy's Tail, which was the second of the Guppy transformation, and I didn't have any keys. So now that I was in a ditch, I had a decision to make. So should I stick with Curved Horn or should I take Flat Penny? Obviously Curved Horn is great for damage output, and I was there sitting myself thinking, I'm Samson, I can take damage, I can increase my damage that way. I have Death Shot, which increases my damage every time I actually shoot an enemy. And I don't really need Curved Horn, it's just 2 extra damage. I would much rather have the Flat Penny to get more keys, and because I have more keys I can open golden chests, and then obviously I can get some items from golden chests. There are a lot of damage ups in the golden chest treasure room, or the pool, sorry, as well, which means that there's a good chance of me actually getting another damage up that's maybe even better than Curved Horn. So I decided to drop it, and of course, what I was saying before, as soon as I entered the next floor, I decided that it was probably a mistake just because my damage was abysmal. I just wasn't doing anything, and I think that's very noted by the fact that I almost missed boss rush. I killed the mom at 1959, which is one of the closest times. Probably not the closest that I've ever beaten mom. I think once I beat her on 20:00 exactly, and boss rush still opened. But in this daily, it was very close. Like I said, I was overestimating my damage on that floor because I had both the curved horn and the passive from getting hit a lot with Samson. So I thought my run is much stronger, that I can actually afford to take the flat penny in that situation. But looking back on it, that wasn't the case. I think if you know that you're gonna get a good item later on, or maybe if you're comfortable enough, that could still be a good decision, like I said, because getting a bunch of keys as consumables is obviously great because you get points, but also because you can open those golden chests that you get by having Guppy's Tail. But having 2 Guppy items is quite a conundrum in this situation, because it's still, having 2 Guppy items essentially doesn't do anything for you, right? It's either you have all 3 or you have none. There's no middle ground. Sure, some of the Guppy items are quite decent, okay, like Guppy's head, but overall, the Guppy items just aren't that effective on their own. So having the Guppy's paw, for example, just doesn't do anything for you, or having Guppy's tail maybe it does something for you, gives you more golden chests, that's an okay effect, but it's not anything noteworthy. The real power in those items you get from getting 3 of them. And what better way to rub it in than to actually finish boss rush, because I have Goat Head, the Devil Deal stays open. I have only 3 Spirit Hearts left because I managed to get hit a few times in boss rush, and seeing Guppy's spot just sitting there taunting me, so I can't pick it up. That was probably the most infuriating thing that has happened in a long time in Isaac. Just the fact I have exactly 3 Spirit Hearts, and I know that my run is weak. Basically, I know that I kind of screwed myself over when I dropped Curved Horn, so I had much less damage than I actually thought I did. So I would have really needed that Guppy's item to actually get to Hush in time. And here I'm in a situation where I have to make a decision. So should I enter the next floor and try to get to Hush in a minute and a half? And I think that's very doable, but of course a lot of that depends on which path you take. And of course I take the path that leads me to the dead end, which is probably my only curse, or my biggest curse when it comes to Isaac. Whenever I try to make a rush for something, I usually find a dead end somewhere. So that decision was made that I'll try to make it to Hush, and obviously the fact if I had only 1 more Spirit Heart, or if I just got it 1 time less in that boss rush, I would have been able to get Guppy's Paw. Or in this situation, I could have gotten Guppy's Collar, which is even more hilarious that I can pick it up. And if that happened, I would be actually in a much better position. And not only would I get to Hush, I would explore more rooms, I would get more consumables, I would get hit less overall, and I would be able to beat Hush, because obviously with Guppy, there's really no reason why you can't beat Hush, especially because we have a combination of items which allow us to deal damage to multiple enemies via penetrative shots of some sorts. So that was quite a bummer, in the sense that obviously someone who's played this run basically the same as me, but only took 1 hit less of damage, has 10,000 more points, which is just a culmination, or maybe gives you an idea of how little mistakes can add up to have some real consequences in the end, at least points-wise. Obviously, there are no real consequences to losing the game. There's really nothing to be gained or lost here. But if you're going for that high score, this is the difference between getting 150th, which I got, and getting like the top 20, which I would have gotten probably if I got that Guppy's item on the mount floor. But overall, I still can't say that this was too bad of a daily. Actually had a lot of fun with it. I had some fun synergies, not anything too spectacular then again, but having triple shot along with Deadeye is kind of a fun synergy, because you have to hit all 3 of your shots, because if any of them miss, you use your dead shot damage, which means you kind of have to stay active and kind of get close to enemies, which I really like whenever an item kind of forces me to play differently in order to maximize my damage output, or just the way I play. So for that reason, that was fun to play as. I wouldn't do it again if I had the choice, because this run was still quite underpowered. But obviously, when we got a Guppy by the Guppy's Collar, things went much smoother. And here we're approaching the last Isaac fight on this floor. And another tip is, if you actually can afford it, if you can drop keys somehow, if you have less than 3 keys, I think, or 3 or less keys, there's a higher chance of the sacrifice room spawning. And when that happens, the sacrifice room, you can take it and just damage yourself, and then get to the dark room. And that's usually always worth it, because you get obviously more rooms to explore, and you can beat the lamb, which also grants you quite a nice sizable amount of points. But sadly, we had 60 keys and no way to get rid of them, so there's no real point in doing that. This is just maybe more of an advanced state if you have the control over it. And on some dailies, it comes comes in handy. Obviously on some dailies there's no consequence, or there's no difference, you can't really do anything about it. With that said, like I said before, we did finish in 150th. It takes a bit of time to load. And our damage penalty, again, was much lower than I thought it would. Maybe the formula of how the damage penalty is actually calculated got changed in some way, because I think I'm getting hit much more than I used to, but my damage penalty is much lower than it used to be, which is odd. But then again, I think it's a welcome change, because I think damage penalty was too high previously, because this is a game where taking damage is sometimes not expected, but even encouraged, because there are a lot of items which require you to take damage to get effects of it. So the fact that if damage penalty was lowered, I think that's a good change in the right direction, at least for the daily scoring system. Overall, we did rank, we did get through 35,000 points, which is quite high in some respects and not that high in other respects. Obviously, if we got Hush, we would have gotten at least 5,000 more points, and if we would have gotten Guppy, which would have allowed us to get Hush, I think our score would be like 7,000 points higher at least, which would have been pretty decent. I've seen scores at maximum around 47,000 on today's daily, so having a 42,000 score would put us at least in the top 50, if not even higher. So yeah, this daily was decent. I would say it was decent. It could have been better, but then again, it was a Samson daily, so those don't always go well for me. Either way, guys, I hope you enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you next time.